In this lesson, we're going to review region chaining as it pertains to the dynamic toolpaths, and then we'll look at some tips and tricks regarding chaining in general. To start, I'm going to go to the dynamic toolpath called dynamic mill. And the way this differs from traditional chaining, instead of just selecting entities you want to machine, you can select entities you want to machine and also entities you want to avoid. So as an example, I can click on machining region, make sure face and loop are selected, and select this outside shape right here. And when I'm done, I can hit the checkbox, and that is my machining region. So at this point, I'm just going to be machining this area right here, and it will be considered like a pocket. So it's going to run into and go through these three bosses. But I can also choose avoidance regions. So specifically, I can pick this face, and that face as avoidance regions. And so if I hit preview chains, I can look at my preview colors, and we can see that red is the material I'll be removing, and this orange color is the containment. Now in this particular case, I have some internal sharp corners here, so my tool is not going to come outside of this. Well, we can change that by changing our machining region strategy from stay inside to from outside. Now if I hit preview chains, you'll see that the tool can freely move in and out of this area as it machines this red area. And if we look at our colors, we'll see that red is still the machining area, but the blue is a motion region. So going back to our chaining basics, chaining is the same. However, when we get into dynamic, just realize that you'll be chaining more than just what you want to cut. You can also select what you want to avoid. You can even determine what's called air regions, which is an area that's safe for the tool to move in and out of. You can define your entry chain, and you can also use it to contain the toolpath. We'll hit cancel out of here, and the last thing we want to do in this lesson is look at some chaining tips and tricks. So let's go back to an example we looked at previously. If I go into a contour toolpath and I start chaining something, for example, if I select this shape right here, you'll see I get one green arrow, and that tells me that I have a closed chain, and that's good. Let's unselect that. Let's do the same thing right here. I get a closed chain. I have one green arrow. Now what happens if I select geometry like this, and I see a green arrow and a red arrow? That is what I call a red flag. That's something that we need to investigate, because it doesn't find itself as a closed chain. And if I zoom in here, you'll see that the geometry here actually doesn't intersect. This line starts way over here, and when it comes back around, it stops here. So in a case like this, we'd probably want to cancel out of this, say no, and then go back into your wireframe and trim geometry. And let's trim this to that. Now it's trimmed. So if we zoom back out and do that again, and select the same geometry, notice we get one solid green arrow. And again, if we do it over here to this one, it looks good. This one looks good. This one also looks good. This last one here, again, here we get this green and red arrow combination. If you zoom in here, we have a similar issue to what happened before, where this geometry wasn't trimmed properly. So again, we'd have to go in here and trim this. So every time you change geometry, if you're expecting an open chain, you would get a green start arrow and a red end arrow. If you're expecting a closed chain, you would get one green arrow. If you get anything other than what you expect, you might want to check the geometry to make sure it's suitable for machining.